This children's address this Easter is about a lamb. Pets, cats, dogs, cows, guinea pigs and owls all have been included in poems and nursery rhymes. And one of the most famous animals concerns this little fellow here, which is our little lamb. And here is the nursery rhyme that it's about. Mary had a little lamb. Its fleece was white as snow, and everywhere that Mary went, the lamb was sure to go. It followed her to school one day, which was against the rule. It made the children laugh and play to see a lamb at school. And then it ran to her and laid its head upon her arm, as if to say, I'm not afraid, you'll keep me from all harm. What makes the lamb love Mary so? The eager children cry. Oh, Mary loves the lamb, you know, the teacher did reply. And you, each gentle animal, in confidence may bind, and make them follow at your will, if you are only kind. And so the teacher turned it out, but still it lingered near, and waited patiently about, till Mary did appear. Now this is the nursery rhyme that we all know. Maybe not the full nursery rhyme, but certainly we do know the story. But something I did discover recently, which I didn't know, is that this nursery rhyme is based on a true story. There really was a Mary who had a pet lamb, which went to school with her one day. Now Mary's name was Mary Sawyer, and she was born in the year 1806, and grew up on a farm in a place called Sterling in Massachusetts. When Mary was about 9, one of the sheep on the farm gave birth to a lamb that was struggling to survive. So Mary took it in and fed it and kept it warm. Her father allowed her to keep it, and gradually it became stronger. But it was her pet, and it became very attached to Mary. In fact, it didn't really understand that it was a sheep at all. It wouldn't stay in a field, and it wouldn't stay with the other sheep. In fact, it preferred to be with the cows or the horses, although most of all, it liked to be with Mary. Then one day in 1815, Mary walked to school with her brother, when they heard the little lamb was walking behind them. It followed them all the way to school. When they got there, Mary tried to hide the lamb under her desk, underneath a blanket. Now in those days, all the children had to come out to the front of the class to recite what they had learned, and Mary was dreading having to do that. Years later, she wrote exactly what happened. By and by, I went forward to recite, leaving the lamb. But in a moment there was a clatter, and a clatter on the floor, and I knew it was pattering of the hooves of my lamb. Oh, how mortified I felt. Well, what would your teacher say today if you brought a lamb into school? I know it certainly wouldn't be allowed in my school. Fortunately, all the other pupils and the teachers just laughed at what had happened, and the lamb was put outside in a barn until it was time for Mary to go home. But the story didn't end there, for there was a visitor to the school that day. His name was John Roulstone, and he was the nephew of the local minister. He was getting ready to go to college in Boston. But he saw what had happened, and the next day he came back to the school and gave Mary a piece of paper. And on the paper he had written the words, Mary had a little lamb. A few years later the poem was published with additional verses in Sarah Hale's 1830 book, Poems for Other Children. So that is the true story of Mary Had a Little Lamb. When she grew up, Mary got married, and she lived in the same time. She became the matron of a local hospital for over 35 years and was very much involved in her church. Indeed, when, many years later, it needed funds, she gave it a pair of socks for them to sell for repairs to the church. She also helped to set up the first Sunday school in the town, and herself taught in the Sunday school for many years. She was also a member of lots of organisations that tried to help people, especially women in the locality. She was a very kind and unselfish person who had no children of her own, and she and her husband gave their house to the church when they died. Her house was kept as a museum until a few years ago, when it was destroyed. But then a replica was built, exactly the same, to remind everyone of Mary. And if you go to Stirling, you will see a statue of the Lamb, still to this day. So this is a nice story, but what is important about it, and what it tells us the most, is about the kindness of Mary. She was kind to the lamb when it needed help, and she devoted her whole life to helping others. These acts of kindness are something that is preserved in the poem from almost 200 years ago, right up to the present day, and certainly now, in the time of trouble with this terrible virus, we can all do something kind to people we don't know.